I get asked this a lot when I'm out and about mapping cars. Which is better, road or dyno? So I'm going to go through advantages, disadvantages of each and hopefully come to a conclusion with you. But first we need to understand the word better. Does better mean cheaper? Does better mean easier? Does better mean more convenient? Does better mean better results? Difficult to say without going through the pros and cons of each method. So here we are. Tuning on the road has got some big advantages and some very big disadvantages. So let's take each one of those. Number one, it's convenient for the customer and often the mapper. Number two, you can tune anywhere in the world. You don't need to be near a dyno centre. They're not that common to have four-wheel dynos available, and in certain parts of the world there isn't one in the whole country. So tuning on the road is a really good option for that. You just need to bolt on your deck cans, plug in the wideband, plug in the laptop, and away you go. It's also lower cost because you don't have to pay the dyno charges, obviously. No one likes giving away money. And you can calibrate the car based on how it feels in the real world, on the road, where it's going to be driven. So it's a big plus for that. Certain cars behave slightly differently on the road to on the dyno. And after all, it's the real world that actually matters. So looking at the disadvantages, these are big. It does involve driving spiritedly on the public road. Not always possible through traffic or being in a built-up area or other road users or weather conditions. And as a result, there's potential danger to the owner of the car, to the mapper, and to other road users. You need roads with a sensible speed limit, very little traffic, and very few other people. And that's difficult to find in the UK. It also relies on the vehicle itself being in good condition. And a lot of cars over the years where I've mapped them on the road scare the hell out of me. And as a result, I try and steer clear of mapping on the road for that reason. Because a lot of the time I come back after the mapping and I'm telling the customer that the brakes are awful, suspension shot, and they say, oh yeah, I was going to do that next. Really, it should be a first and then power. If the customer is driving themselves while the mapper is mapping, the experience of the driver often isn't of what the mapper is wanting in a mapping environment, so it's difficult to get them to understand exactly what you want as far as mapping. As a result, I don't allow customers to drive their own cars. Being across roundabouts and into fields whilst mapping is not fun. Another downside for mapping on the road is you can never get an exact power figure. Road dyno software is available, but it's so inaccurate that it's pretty much a waste of time. I know some mappers use it, and it's reasonably useful for a before and after, so long as you're adjusting the weight of the vehicle for the fuel that you're using during the mapping. Reasonably useful if you know the exact weight of the car, reasonably useful if you know the exact coefficient of drag and the frontal area, and you've got a flat road with no wind, reasonably useful. But unless you've got that, it's a waste of time. So just base it on the feel of the car, and in that instance it is useful. So that's road mapping on the road, live tuning as some people call it. It's as live tuning as it is in the dyno, so I don't know where that expression came from in the first place. But dyno tuning on the dyno or dynometer, rolling road, whatever you want to call it, is a controlled environment, measuring detonation, measuring air-fuel ratio. The car's strapped down onto the dyno. It's perfectly safe in there, probably safer in a dyno cell than it is on a public road. There's many different types of dyno, many different makes. In the UK we tend to use RaceDynamix or DazTech or Maha. They all have the pros and cons. They all have a loyal following of people that believe their figures more than others, and I will be going into that in another video very soon, comparing US wheel horsepower figures to UK flywheel figures. So look out for that video. That will be quite interesting. The dyno software automatically compensates for weather conditions, so long as you've got the weather station switched on in the RaceDynamix software, for example. It will produce the same power figures, or virtually the same power figures, on a hot day as it will on a cold day. It's more fun when you're doing it on a slightly cool day rather than a baking hot day. And having been in a dyno cell when the snow's blowing in from the vent from outside and that's getting thrown at you at 70 mile an hour in a car without a windscreen, it's definitely more fun when it's slightly warmer than that. So the advantages of dyno: it's safer for the car, safer for the owner. Obviously they're not in there or not in the car. Quite often I have the owner watching or taking videos or taking pictures, asking a million questions. Great. And it's safer for the mapper. I believe it's safer for the car because you're monitoring everything without having to concentrate on other road users. You can totally absorb yourself with the information that you're getting from the car, from the deck cans, from the wideband, and actually see and take action of issues before they become real issues. Once you're used to tuning on a dyno, you can map every single area that you would see on the road anyway. So there is no real difference. You can load it up, you can simulate pretty much every driving condition, but a big plus is the fact that you can actually lift the bonnet and look at the engine while you're doing a run, while you're on boost, while you're on power, and see things happening real time, like a wastegate arm blowing open or an intake hose sucking shut. You can see these things happen right before your eyes, rather than just thinking that they're happening while you're on the road. Also, an advantage for the dyno is you can see the power. You've got a visual representation of the power on the screen in front of you, so you can see curves in the power curve. You can see dips, you can see peaks, you can see things that are happening that you wouldn't necessarily feel on the road. On that basis, I believe it is more accurate to tune in a controlled environment, but it's not always the best. As a self-tuner, you probably wouldn't have access to a dyno. It would be very expensive to hire out a dyno centre for you to learn to map a car, because in the early days when you're tuning your own car, it's a very slow process. You're adding in half a degree of timing, making minor changes, and to hire out a dyno to do that on the dyno would be very expensive. You'd be in there for hours, be a lot of stress on the car. So recommendation from me is map it on the road to start with. Get it feeling right, get it working right, get the data coming out of it looking right, and then get it onto the dyno and just understand what's going on while you're in the dyno and make some minor changes while you're in there to smooth out the curves. So what do I prefer? What do I prefer? You know, I prefer tuning on the dyno. It is easier. It is, you don't have to worry about finding a gap in the traffic. You don't have to worry about finding a road that's suitable for driving spiritedly. You don't have to worry about potholes or horses or people on bikes. You just concentrate on the power, getting the tune right for the car. But on occasion, the right thing to do is to tune it on the road. You can get a feel for the car a lot better on the road. But I never have the owner driving the car while I map it on the road. And certainly for anything over 400 horsepower, bad things happen really quickly, and other road users aren't expecting you to be travelling or accelerating quite so quickly. So I do map on the road, generally with me driving, with a laptop on the passenger seat, one ear of the deck cans on, because two ears would be illegal, So looking at the data after I've done a run, but because I've had much experience of driving these cars on the road, I know what they're going to feel like, or what they should feel like, and what I'm expecting them to feel like, so I can take corrective action should I need to whilst mapping. I would recommend taking your car to a dyno. If you're self-tuning, get the basics of the map right, get the car feeling right, take it to a dyno to test it, to see what the power is, what the curves look like, make sure that it's running the right air-fuel ratio, and the dyno operator will have an idea as to what you are trying to achieve. Make some changes while you're there, but go away with some homework, make some changes afterwards, go back in a few months just to see whether you've got actual progress. If you're in the UK, give me a call, bring the car along. If you've tuned it yourself, not a problem, I don't judge. So bring it along, we can get it on the dyno, we can see how good your tune is, and I can give you some pointers as to what to improve, and maybe give you some shortcuts for doing that. So which is better? Both or neither, but generally you go with the tools that you got. The dyno is a great tuning tool because you can make changes and instantly see the difference that you're making. I love customers watching while I'm tuning a car because they can see where it was, with all the variations in boost or the air fuel mixture being wrong, and actually see the progress, see the grass smoothening out, if that is such a word, smoothening, and see the final figures, and more importantly than the figures, the shapes of the curve. Which is best? Both. I tune on the road and on the dyno, but I prefer the dyno. So see you next time.